Welcome to The Naked Truth. And now, your host, Bridget Barclay.
Good evening, America, and a very good early morning here in England. I today have Vinnie Adams. He's the host of the Disclosure Team, and he does an amazing YouTube channel, and I've put a post to it. He's become a prominent figure in the, I'll call it the UFO field and community. He's interviewed so many in-depth people from all walks of life, whether it be from whistleblowers to forensic experts. Today, I've thought of some really good questions to ask him on a personal front, because mine involved military helicopters and Men in Black car on one of my encounters. So with Vinnie, he delves into lots of different topics, from government security and secrecy and to advanced technologies and personal encounters. So today, without further ado, I welcome Vinnie Adams from Disclosure Team. Are you there, Vinnie? Ooh, are we there? There he is, and he's in England. Yay! And he's doing it at 1 o'clock in the morning with me. Well done, you. What we do for ufology, hey? Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. You know,
thank you. No, it's a pleasure to have you. And it's been a few years since I've seen you, but it's absolutely lovely to have you back this side of the pond. And like I said, I am going to ask you some personal questions, because mine involved military helicopters and various government things. But Vinnie, I will always ask you the question: how did you get into this subject? I'll always ask people that first of all. How did you get into it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always get asked this, and I wish I could say I had a personal sighting or experience, but I didn't. I never have. I think I was born in the end of the 70s, so by the early 80s, as a young boy, we were swamped with an array of really great science fiction movies. Close Encounters was out. I was a Star Wars fanatic as a kid, so really, it just from a very early age, I was obsessed with space and the questions of like what else is out there. And that just carried on throughout my childhood, right up into my early adult life. And it just grew and grew and grew. And eventually, after finding a few fringe subjects, I landed on the UFO subject, and it kind of stuck. And lo and behold, here I am now. And
so how many years ago was that then? How many years ago when did you start the Disclosure Team?
Disclosure Team started during lockdown, so probably around I kind of conceived the idea around 2020 and started my Instagram page, which is kind of where I kind of came public. I'd been researching since about 2010 privately, spending hours and hours just wading through declassified documents, just trying to kind of understand or gain some understanding of the subject. But yeah, during lockdown, I started my Instagram page, and Disclosure. It wasn't called Disclosure Team at first. It was Disclosure 2020 because it was 2020. I didn't expect it to go anywhere or do anything. It was more just somewhere that I could post a few things for longevity, just so I could look back on it myself. And I found that it really took on and grew really quickly. And so at the start of 2021, I changed it to Disclosure Team. And then within a few months, I'd made friends in the community. I was convinced by a few friends to start a YouTube channel. And yeah, it just took off, and it hasn't stopped since.
And I suppose really COVID and lockdown made people research, made people sort of think. What was your main topic that you really liked? Was it obviously mainly military then?
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember in 2017, the waking up on the morning of the 17th of December to the front page of the New York Times, and really being absolutely wowed by it, thinking that this was the beginning or the next step, because for so many years prior to that, I felt like we were just plateauing, and it was just a steady stream. There was nothing really big and fresh happening. So sorry, go on.
No, carry on.
I was just going to say, by the time 2017 came around, I was re-engaged with a new, fresh kind of outlook on it. So by the time Disclosure Team started, I started kind of focusing more on the government, military, intelligence community side of things.
Yeah, because you've got a background to look at. You've got obviously reports and, you know, declassified reports and everything. So you've got, you know, credibility to look into.
Sure.
I thought it was the 16th of December that it came out. And why I say that, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, because it was my bloody birthday, the 16th.
Well, there you go. It could be. I might be a day
Well,
out.
right. It was the 16th of December because I thought, bloody hell, it's my birthday and we've got the Tic Tac video out. I thought, oh my God, all my birthdays have happened. So I'm sure it was the 16th. I'm sure it was.
You're probably right.
I was flabbergasted on my birthday. I thought, thank you, everybody upstairs. I thought, thank you. It was a sort of like great way to sort of like start the birthday. Right. So, okay. You've interviewed so many different people. And you've got some very good personal friends within it. And that is what's important within this. There is you need such trust within the community because we know the charlatans out there and we've all been and seen and heard and everything. But you've got to really trust some people. I trust quite a few people within the community and so do you. So questions that I'd like to ask you are, because you've delved into the military, I thought, bloody hell, Nick Pope, I've always asked him various questions on it. But now, because of obviously my encounter on the freeway in February 93 involved 5 unmarked military helicopters intercepting a craft. It was very close proximity to me, and it involved a Men in Black car, right? It's got quite a bit of credibility now. Back then, when I reported it in 96, I reported it to MUFON back in the States. I filed out a report, spoke to Walt Andreas. So now there has to be something classified to have military helicopters to go and intercept the craft that was literally like 7 or 8 meters away from me, 45-foot object on the freeway in Los Angeles in broad daylight. Weirdly, it's the same place that a lady called Lisa Royal Priest, she's a channeler, she came out just after Bashir had started out in Los Angeles, and same location, bang on the same location at Holiday Inn at Brentwood. I just find it quite interesting that now would be a great time for anybody military, because I've been public. I mean, that encounter was 32 years ago, February just gone. So let's say for the 28 years that I've been going public, spoke publicly with Nick Pope at various conferences, and I've gone down the right channels like you have. You've gone to meet the people with the credibility, worked with Dolores Cannon, Bud Hopkins, all the people that know me know all of this. So I'm probably repeating myself. But for those that don't, now for, let's say, the whistleblowers, shouldn't they be looking into encounters that people like experiencers have had military involvement that has been documented? You know, I mean, I documented it with quite a few big people within the field. You would have thought now is the time really to just not change the situation to talk about whistleblowers, but if there are people, and it's not just me, there are other people that have witnessed it with military involvement, either videoed it, filmed it, or just a report, shouldn't they start looking into that? Because it gives it more credibility. The fact that I've gone public and other people have gone public gives it more credibility to look into the case, surely, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point. I mean, look, you know, if you look at the government and the military side of things over the past few years, they've been really struggling to set up a credible and good structured organization to look into this. You know, Arrow, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, is the latest iteration. They're still in a way in its early days.
It is. Yeah.
And they have to sort of start somewhere. So they're starting with these military cases with the whistleblowers that we've seen coming forward. You know, I think the experiences on the public side, definitely, their voice should definitely be heard. If you look back to ORSAP, back around 2009, they were looking into the public cases as well. But then that kind of stopped getting funded, which moved into ATIP in the Pentagon. and then refocused again back on the military. So I think, unfortunately, what we're looking at is a long process here that isn't just going to happen overnight. So as much as I agree the experience of voice is one of the most important, if not the most important, I think that down the road it will come to that. But unfortunately, it's just a long process.
I mean, the fact you can, I mean, ATIP only deal with military personnel. They don't deal with others. So, you know, it's sort of, to call out 5 military unmarked helicopters, there has to be reports on it, right?
I think the only thing I could say about that is it may not be direct military. It may be some rogue offshoot organization. You know, we've started to learn that there have been crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs that have their own kind of mini military, as it were. So these could be completely rogue, you know, not under the jurisdiction of any of the military branches.
Yeah. Oh God, don't say that. That will even frighten me even more. Oh gosh, no, but well, yeah, I suppose so. Really, yeah, of course, because you know we don't know. Well, unidentified. They didn't have any markings on the.
Yeah.
They were totally black, unmarked military helicopters in pursuit. And then obviously the Men in Black car there as well. I mean, it made me sound mad at the time, the fact that it was a UFO encounter, a Men in Black car first of all, then the military helicopters. It does sound totally not real, but it did happen with a witness as well. But yeah, it would be great if people would look into that more from the defense side, because it would just give, well, I don't care about my credibility. I don't care if people believe me or not. The fact that it happened and it's documented, and I've constantly documented everything, it should just help the fact with the phenomena in all respect. Anyway, that was my little rant. Anyways, so who specifically do you take account of within the UFO military side? I know that you're great friends with Louis. Who do you listen to more out of all of them?
Wow. Do you know what? I probably wouldn't listen to anyone more than anyone else. I try to keep an even spread across the board. I like to hear both sides and all sides of every kind of conversation and every case. I think it helps paint a bigger picture. I tend to not try and just focus on one individual, because then I'm really kind of narrowing my vision and view on a perspective or a theory or a hypothesis or a viewpoint on a certain case. So I take the bigger picture. I prefer to take all aspects, bring everything together, and then it gives me a better way of kind of coming to my own conclusion, my own analysis of the information that I have gathered. And then even then, I tend not to kind of formulate any complete conclusion, because at the end of the day, there's always missing information and missing data. So again, it's like, take it all on board, whether it's documents, witness testimony, everything. You know, the more we get, the better the picture that's painted.
So the fact that you're over this side of the pond now, back in England, are you going to be doing more work over here?
I have a few more things.
Work, research, English cases.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking into English stuff, and I always dip in to a lot of the historical stuff. And this week in particular, I've been looking back at some of the work that was done by Paul Devereaux and Dr. David Clarke on Earthlights. Dipping back into Earthlights Revelations, that book. There's been some incredible light phenomena cases here in the past, within the past 100 years, there's been all sorts. So I like to do a little bit of that on the side. But I'm also, I'm going to be in America again at the end of May for Contact in the Desert. So doing lots of different things.
That's Palm Springs for everyone that wants to go over there. Enjoy.
A
nice part of the world with everybody. So funny you say about the Earthlights. I think it was only about 2 weeks ago, Preston Dennett on his YouTube channel, he talked about Earthlights and various different cases, about 5 or 6 different reports. And it was really, I don't know why he didn't call it Earthlights. What did he call it? I can't remember what he called it, but it was really interesting because were just like literally white ball phenomena. And I've witnessed that with my son Orion at the front door, literally like a massive ball, and it didn't diminish. It stayed the same side. It just decreased in its color a little bit. And then I think we watched it for about 5 minutes, it totally went out, and we locked the doors and all around the house. So they do happen, or I've witnessed them coming down through the trees, coming down on the sides of the field, going really low on the field, following the field all the way down. Just literally what you say, earth lights. Yeah, a phenomena in itself that hasn't really been highly researched, really. No. And for me, for those two encounters, I couldn't communicate with them, which I found quite strange. They were quite independent of themselves. They were quite secure with what they were doing. Literally a bit like you say, like with the crop circles, of people, witness the lights and then the making of the crop circles way back when. It was very much like that. They were literally there to do something, and then they weren't communicating at all. So go back to Preston Dennett a couple of weeks ago, and he did a great podcast on them. And he actually said that he needed to do a full podcast on them. But he reeled off about 5 or 6 different encounters, which was very, very interesting. So, right. Talk to me about within Congress now. Where are we now? Because I get lost within Congress, to be totally honest.
There's a lot of ups and downs with Congress. I mean, the last major event, obviously, was the congressional hearing back in November with the House Oversight Committee, with Lou Elizondo, Admiral Tim Gallaudet, Michael Schellenberger, and former NASA employee Mike Gold. Now, it's kind of gone a bit quiet since then, but Representative Eric Burleson, the Republican from Missouri, I believe, he has taken on board David Grush, the whistleblower from 2023, as a sort of special staffer to help advise him on matters of UAP. Now, he's not been taken on board by the committee, the oversight committee that Burleson sits on, but Grush has already apparently divulged 20 names to Eric Burleson. They're trying to get Arrow into a skiff alongside people like Lou Elizondo, Christopher Mellon, to kind of put their heads together and actually formulate some kind of plan. And even a couple of days ago, Eric Burleson appeared on a podcast saying he strongly believes in what David Grush has said with regards to the legitimacy of there being a crash retrieval and reverse engineering program. So as much as like publicly, there's not much that seems to be happening congressionally. Yeah, right. There's a lot happening behind the scenes. There's meetings happening at the start of May that have been organized with a lot of Congress members, and the UAP Disclosure Fund, which is an organization with individuals such as Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, Gary Nolan, Lester Nare, and Matt Ford on the board. So lots happening behind the scenes. It's just keeping that momentum going so that we can see more congressional hearings coming in the coming months. So fingers crossed it does pick up again.
And it's really great that how the, dare I say, well, not here in England, but the American news reporters are really picking up on it, and they're really hot on it, aren't they? They are. And, like it's quite amazing. If I look back to, 32 years ago or 29 years ago, I went public, nothing. And then now that you do get to see, and we stay up and watch it, it's like staying up and watching the Super Bowl. It's like, oh my God, this is quite amazing, to hear certain words, and to hear, that people have been harmed or threatened because of, willing to talk, it is exciting times, but we don't get that in England. Why aren't we getting that in England? Why aren't the news? I mean, Nick Pope, he's a great advocate here. He'll always put his nose in the press over here, and they'll always ask about. They'll always go to him for various questions and reports, but there isn't enough on the English news.
No, I mean,
it's like we're so behind.
We are. We have been. Yeah. We always are. Yeah. But the tabloids. The problem is the tabloids. The Sun and the other publications on that kind of level, they still run with very stigma-based stories. They'll put a picture of Mulder and Scully on next to an article about UAP. So the seriousness just drops, and of course the readership, they see that, and the stigma sticks. It's still there. We do have the odd occasional mature article, let's say, in the Guardian and things like that, but it's certainly not even close to what we need. And the BBC are just as bad as well. They don't pick up on it enough as they should. They really should, because there are some good reporters out there. There's some great reporters in England that take the subject seriously. They just don't get the opportunities through the groups that they work for to be consistent.
I mean, we don't even have anybody that goes to Parliament really and speaks on behalf of us.
Not anymore.
No,
not anymore. We used to back in the 90s. There were.
Vinnie, you're back in England. Vinnie, you're back in England. You're in England now, my friend, for a bit. You know, put the suit, put the tie on, and go and talk the talk.
I mean, yeah, I would. I've tried many times to contact many politicians. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
They generally don't get back to you, or you get a boilerplate response just saying, we've received your email or letter or whatever it is, and that's the last you hear of anything. They just can't get to that next step where you can actually get face to face with someone to put over a good point.
So where are we going wrong then in England? Where are we going wrong? Why have the Americans got it right?
Well, I mean, we've got nobody from the Ministry of Defence who's speaking out. Nick Pope is probably the last person that's ever come out of that institution who's willing to speak publicly. I've had conversations with former MOD employees who absolutely do not want to speak publicly because of the ridicule and the stigma associated with this subject.
Yeah.
There are people who have worked within programs dealing with UFOs in the British institutions that I've spoken to. And if they came forward, we'd maybe feel like we're getting closer to the way that the US is doing things, but they just won't come forward. It's a shame.
No, yeah. I mean, it's not like, and also conferences wise, okay, because I think mainly the big conferences, as we all know, that are out in the States, we have lost our conferences back here. Back in the, in the early 2000s, we had really great conferences here in England. And we don't do them. I mean, we don't have the seating capacity. It used to have like, a couple of thousand, now, you've got the small town conferences that only hold like, 200, 300 people. And yet you've got, Ancient Aliens Live. It's got 2,000 people auditorium every night, every night of the week. And you just think, where are we going wrong? And it's
I think it'll pick up. There are things in the works.
What's in the works?
I've been speaking with some people about potentially doing something later on this year, but as I've come to realize, these things, they're extremely expensive to host and put on.
Yeah, right.
You've got to find, look at Steve Mera and the Awakening Conference, where I met you a couple of years ago. They were pretty big events, but I think there were some issues there with funding, unfortunately. And so they're no longer happening, which is a real shame, because not just for the great speakers that we get to watch, but for the networking.
Right.
It's not easy to network other than on the internet, but if you face to face, it's a real shame. But hopefully something will come together later this year.
Well, I just think that, as more people should be really campaigning for it this side, because you're right, there is such a really bad stigma here. And it's like me and you deal with mainly American people, or, well, not just mainly Americans, but, far field, not all of our sort of researchers here. God, I can't get my words out right now. But the researchers over here just don't, I just research experiences, or I talk to researchers. I would love for a massive conference over here. I would love it to go really big time, to just put us back in the picture, because we were back. We had some amazing researchers back in the day, in the early days, and we don't now. And it's such a shame, because the old conferences, where all of our best friends were made, all of my old school ufology friends that are still my friends, that are still here, still around, should still be there. The old Jenny Randalls, Georgina Bruley, Peter Paget, all of the lovely people. But it's so sad. That I suppose it's a bit like when a family member passes away, the door sometimes closes. When Graham Birdsall used to have his conferences, they were amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you used to go to the old Leeds conferences.
I didn't know. I'm very familiar with the way that what happened. You know, I spend a lot of time, luckily lived in the same city as David Clark. So we regularly meet up, and he sort of filled me in on what used to happen in this country when it came to
That's where we met at the pub with Dave Clark. Right, we're going to go into a commercial break. We'll talk about the pub and Dave Clark later. All right, sure. We're going to go into a commercial break. We'll see you back in 5. See you in a bit.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unexmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unexmedia.com or amazon.com.
Tickets are now on sale for Rebels of Disclosure 2025, May 12th through the 15th in Grafton, Illinois at the beautiful Pierre Marquette Lodge and Conference Center. This will be a 4-day event with 12 speakers covering topics such as ET contact, experiencer testimonies, lost history, secret space programs, time travel, Illuminati, parallel realities, and so much more. Visit journeytotruth.online for more details.
Welcome back to The Naked Truth. My guest tonight is Vinnie Adams. There he is. Thank you very much, Vinnie.
Thank you.
That's all right. I want to ask about Ryan Graves. Okay. So his claims are extraordinary. Talking about the existence of non-human intelligence and recovered craft and bodies, which we've all heard at the Congress. What else is he saying? What else is he? Because that was about a year and a half ago. He came out with that. About a year ago, he came out with that. What I mean, because I do not look really into the Congress. I don't look into the military stuff, even though my encounters have been military. Tell me a bit more where he's going, because obviously I find that quite interesting. Where is he going?
Well, yeah, I mean, anyway.
we want disclosure. We want them to be open and honest, and that's what's happening to experiencers. So, you know.
Yeah, no, Ryan Graves, obviously, he came forward after him and a lot of his squadron mates back on the USS Theodore Roosevelt back in 2014 were seeing these strange spheres in cubes off the coast of the East Coast of the US. And since then, Ryan has started an organization called Americans for Safe Aerospace, where he speaks to an awful lot of pilots, both commercial, military, and civilian, about their encounters. So their
safety as well, right?
Exactly. That's kind of their number one thing. But you know, they're gathering an awful lot of data and testimony from people with regards to these things that they're seeing in the skies all the time. all the time. So,
Yeah.
you know, not a lot of that data is public at the moment, but I know that Ryan's meeting with members of Congress as well, doing his part. So it all adds to the overall big picture.
So there will be release of, I'm sure, more footage. You know, I mean, we used to wait years and years and years, but you know, they are quite. I mean, what year was the 16th of December? What year was actually that one filmed?
Which one? The Tic Tac. The Tic Tac was 2004.
Okay, all right. So
And the
now
other two videos were 2014 that were released. You know, the 3 Navy videos.
And what's the jellyfish one?
The jellyfish was the one filmed over the military base in Afghanistan, I believe it was. That was a lot more recent. I'm going to guess, I can't remember. I think it was about 2013. I could completely be wrong there, but I believe that was around that period.
I mean, we're getting some strange footage, amazing footage, shot from military. Oh God, I can't even get my words out right tonight. But shot from the military. But it's like now we have the age of the internet and we have the age of AI. It just makes everything so much harder for absolutely everybody. If you go off and research, you're caught up literally in a web because you just don't know what's fact and you don't know what's fake and everything. That's why it goes back to who do you trust within the field? Who do you contact so you can have that communication with to know where, you know, to know where you're going. Have you heard along the pipelines if there's going to be any more stuff released further this year?
Not so much like definitively for anything that's going to be released. Obviously, this week, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp released the video that was taken in 2023, a Navy video, another Tic Tac video, along with witness testimony. These are, you know, highly credible individuals. So that was great to see. You know, it's become quite common knowledge that the government, I'll say the Pentagon, they have great footage that isn't available publicly, and it's a lot better than this kind of black and white FLIR, forward-looking infrared gun camera footage that we're so used to seeing now, which is, you know, it's not the clearest video, but you know, there apparently is high definition 4K video, but there's no way it can be released at the moment with the way things are going. This is why Congress needs to get on top of this as well. You know, the only other way it would come out is through a leak, and you know,
has been done in the past.
Has been done, but it's not the easiest thing to expect people to do either. It's risky.
No. Weirdly, Jeremy Corbell lives in Brentwood, where I had my UFO.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and it's funny because George Knapp, many years ago, we were in contact, and I told him about my encounter. So I hope it got back to him, back to Jeremy Corbell, that it actually happened right on his doorstep, my encounter, which was, yeah. So as in, you say about footage. So much it doesn't. I know everyone wants solid proof and they want it crystal clear, but not everything is in this life is crystal clear anyway, right?
Yeah.
The fact that you have numerous witnesses and credible witnesses that are witnessing it, that should be enough anyway. Not saying that all of them report the same thing, because different angles and different perceptions, different thoughts or different feelings come into it from, you know, from an experiencer's point of view, because they are experiencers as well. I mean, I couldn't imagine being in a helicopter or a jet and having an object come so close to you. I mean, it's fair enough standing outside underneath one, right? But not go back to ATIP, you know, for safety reasons, you know, or people on commercial planes, right? Yeah. You know, witnessing it and videoing it. You know, it is happening. And I suppose people talk about your cell phones and, you know, we should be recording more and everything. Sometimes people don't do it. It's a personal experience. You know, quite a few of my encounters that I haven't, most of my encounters, I've never videoed anything. There is something going to be interesting coming out soon. But, you know, you have credibility in numbers sometimes. Okay. Yes. And that is always helpful. I just wish, but even saying that, even some of the best cases have been singular as well, and they have been outstanding. You know, I'm a huge fan of the humanoids and various things. they have been totally amazing, and they have had evidence as well, ground evidence, and radar and radiation reports and everything.
Sure.
So talk about David Faber, the Tic Tac pilot. What else do we know about him? Has he had any other encounters?
No, I don't believe so. I think the Tic Tac encounter was his one and only experiences. I think he's made it quite clear on, he's not done a lot of interviews, but the ones he has, he made it quite clear that he wasn't into the subject. He didn't really believe in UFOs being, extraterrestrial or origin from, non-human origin. But obviously after his encounter, he was adamant that what he saw defied all laws of physics, and
Absolutely.
he firmly believed it was, not ours. Because there's that conversation that a lot of people think, well, the Tic Tac may just be advanced technology that we were testing out on the ranges out there off the coast of San Diego. But David Fravor doesn't believe that. He thinks,
and that's
it's
massive hotspot, San Diego.
Absolutely, off of Catalina Island, San Clemente.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all the way down to Mexico.
Yeah, I can't believe when I lived in LA, never went to Catalina Island, and I was heavily into the UFO scene back then, having UFO encounters out in LA, and never went there. And I knew about it, and I never went there. Well, sometimes it takes to have an encounter to obviously change your mind. So is he not talking because mentally it affects you? Is he not? Is he not talking widely open now as such, because it does affect you? I mean, witnesses don't have anywhere really to go. We have our friends that we talk to, or we have our friends in high places that we talk to. I'm not talking about them, but I'm talking about other people. It must be really hard for them, because they can't mainly talk to family. I can talk to family, I can talk to friends openly and honestly, but within the military it's got to be a lot more difficult, right?
I think that we have had certain individuals struggle with it, that we I've spoken to a couple of former military person who were really affected by their experience. David Fravor seems to be the opposite. He seems to just be straight down the line. This is what I saw. And that's it. And he just gets on with his life. I don't think it had any kind of negative effect on him. He's stated on podcasts that, he talks about it with his friends and his family. And it's just a matter of fact. It's not a long-standing psychological negative effect on him or anything like that.
Well, I think it's a character thing then, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah. It's I'm a bit of a talker, so I'll go and talk. So it's whether you're a military and you're very inside yourself, and and there's a protocol to sort of go through. I find it difficult though, because they have had personal experiences where they have been harmed, or physical evidence, radiation, and that needs to be actually really talked about publicly a little, quite a lot more, because there are side effects to it, psychologically, mentally, obviously, and physically. I saw a report the other day, I can't remember, I think it was on Linda Morton Howe. Okay. And it's a girl called Amy Reliance, and it was an encounter in Queensland. Right. That she and two other members had witnessed a UFO. She had then got found, I think it was like 300 miles up the road, up the coast of Queensland on the same night. So she had a UFO experience, and then she was found 300. So it's like the Travis Walton sort of experience,
Okay, yeah.
Snowflake, right? And it's like no explanation behind it. Left physical evidence on her body within the garden. It was researched and everything. What do? Do you go to your doctor? Do you talk about it? I mean, now that, we can openly talk to various people about it, but psychologically, when you wake up in the morning and you've got marks on your body and stuff, so, why they need to talk more about that at Congress,
I mean, the work in the US that's been done on that kind of the biological effects has been done again, and mostly by people like Dr. Gary Nolan studying, again, military personnel that have been affected. But then, one good thing, if you look at George Knapp, he hosted a show on Netflix towards the end of last year. I think it was Investigation Alien, I think it was called, and they studied the 1977 Colares incident in Brazil, where for months and months there were UFOs spotted over the village of Colares, and the biological effects, the radiation burns, that these beams of light were coming down on the villagers. That was investigated by the Brazilian military, and there's a lot of documentation available on that. It does seem that in the US it's just not made public, these documents. There's very little that's been released certainly for us researchers to go and really dig into. It's just sparse.
When I came back from America in '93, I went to my doctor, and I told him about my UFO encounter. My hair was falling out. Obviously, I was stressed. I had a little child as well, so all of the hormone thing comes into it. But he treated me for radiation. So on my medical reports, it states that I had a UFO encounter, and he treated me for radiation for it. So and you just think, it's not an everyday thing. It's it's not an everyday thing, and psychologically as well. And you're still having encounters, because, you do have the one-off encounters, but you can, and I always say this as well, I'm sorry if everyone's saying it, but, I've had continuous encounters. My only outlet is really reading, speaking to close friends, and communicating and interviewing people. And, they are my fine group of my circle of trust of friends, really. Yeah. And we need something more personally to be able to talk to, because an encounter can happen at any time, and it can range from one extreme to the other. So for research purposes, for everybody worldwide that are having these encounters, when it really does kick off, I know that we're all going to have the last laugh on everybody, because it's really going on. And thankfully, Congress is trying to help us all with this disclosure.
Yeah, I think also, we now have groups coming or being set up that are there to help and support the experiencer. In the US, you have the experiencer group, and there's been others in the past as well. But now here in the UK, we have a group called Unhidden, where, they have NHS psychologists, PhD psychologists on their team. But again, these institutions and organizations, there is very little funding there. You approach people for funding, and you say, oh, it's for UFO experiences. They just turn around and, they don't want to engage. It's really difficult to kind of get that kind of support. And, you have to think about as well the amount of experiencers who won't go to their doctor for fear of ridicule, who won't speak to friends. They bottle it up inside for years and years and just learn to live with it. There's got to be a vast majority of experiencers who are like that, unfortunately.
There are, because I personally know a few people that have never gone public. Yeah. And I suppose I don't think it's through ridicule, because they know that it's out in the mainstream, and they're doing their own sort of groundwork, and they're watching podcasts, and they're watching all the documentaries, but they still don't want to. It's just a close net of family, friends, and they wouldn't want to talk about it publicly.
Right. Yeah.
And I just think the more people that do, the more disclosure that we'll get for everybody, because it's the domino effect, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I can only hope that as time goes by that, people do see that it's okay to talk about this subject a lot more now. We've started seeing it in public in general, but to get the experiences to talk openly, because they are vital to this whole cause. The experience of voice needs to be heard. It needs to be forefront of the conversation. It's happening too often. And it's, I'm glad to see the focus is shifting away now from the government and the congressional side of things. It's not as hyper focused as it has been. The experience is coming back to the forefront, and there's some great individuals sort of leading that push. It's really good to see.
I mean, you had MIT that used to have massive conferences with John Mack. I mean, I get the book out, get the big massive book out. There you go. That's the big massive book. That is that's their book, and that is from one conference. That is just
Wow.
from one conference. It's absolutely, with all the evidence psychologically from the abductees, investigation, therapy, what we should consider next. It's saying, the abduction experience, that's what we need. People, bums on the seats, back at the conference, talking back to basics and saying, right, this is what's happening to us, and communicating and, televising it back here in England or live or whatever. We really need that because some people, I mean, I go back to some of the podcasts that I listen to. There are certain things that you hear and it's sort of like, I've never heard that before. We are starting to hear things that we've never heard before, which is really quite interesting. And I'm thinking, I haven't had that. It's like, hang on a minute. But then they'll say, oh, I haven't had that. That's where everyone needs to come together. I mean, sometimes you can think, well, hang on a minute, I haven't heard that before, so hang on a minute. But more people start talking, there'll be a pattern. There's a sequence of events, right?
Indeed. Yeah, definitely. And that's why it's great that we have such an abundance of podcasts on all different sizes, from small and, and that's great because you do start seeing new voices sort of coming forward. So it is happening.
Yeah.
It's really encouraging to see that. And, I get a lot of people who message me privately on social media as well, who just want to talk or just want to just write their experience down, even if nothing comes of it being investigated or looked into, just to let it out to somebody that's involved in the subject. And I'm always there to listen and, and respond.
Yeah. I mean, I get emails. I used to run a witness support group. A lot of people would sit happily within a group. Or you get the letters, the old-fashioned letters or the emails that you read. And it's people just letting off the steam, basically. Or they want help with who else that they can go to.
Absolutely,
they know anything? So actually, as a thought, what is your view on hypnosis? Actually, I'm just going to ask, what is your view on hypnosis to do within the UFO field? What do you think on hypnosis?
I mean, I haven't researched it enough. There's always the credibility of it has always been brought up a lot. But you look back at cases that, famous cases like the Betty and Barney Hill case from the early 60s, there was a lot of data points there. There was not just one data point. The hypnosis was a part of that. And things that were said during those hypnosis, more memories were brought forward, apparently, supposedly.
Well, she came up with the star system, didn't she?
The star, which she wouldn't have known normally. So that is a very interesting point.
Totally.
So I mean, it doesn't seem to be used that much these days. I certainly don't hear of it. I think, was it Bud Hopkins used to use it quite a bit in his investigations?
I went with Nick Pope, and for 3 days I did hypnosis, solid hypnosis with Bud Hopkins, and that was intense. And then 1 day with Dolores Cannon, 2 days with Dolores Cannon here in England, but Bud out in the States. Has any of the military used it?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Because in the court of law in the States, hypnosis and lie detector tests you can use. Lie detector tests over here in England aren't used in courts. They don't use them. There's a different law over here.
Right.
I'm not sure what it is, that we just don't take it into account, but the Americans do. Because I put up my hand when I did my road trip to the States, and I got arrested at Area 51. Put that on my list. I love that. Thank you very much. But I said that I'd do a lie detector test, and it was all set up to do the lie detector test, and the BBC pulled out right at the last minute. They came into the room and said no. And believe me, I worked myself up to do that, because I'm thinking, shit, what happens if I fail it? I know what I saw, but I mean, it's like then my credibility, even though at the end of the day, I don't care what anyone else thinks.
Sure.
But it just would be interesting if they do anything like that, because that's the path us experiencers go down.
Yeah, no, I've not heard of anything in recent years. It just seems to not be used as much.
Because it is a therapy. It is still, because again, Okay, because I'm going to go new agey then with you now. Then what about what? Okay, I will do. What about? Do you think about all of the channelings and things that people are doing?
I mean,
Yeah.
I struggle with it. I'm not going to lie. I do struggle with it because it's a case of, other than what they're saying when they're channeling, there is not really much that I've heard or seen that can really back it up. It's kind of a case of you either believe it or you don't. And
wise words.
I'm open to it, but I can't use it as definitive, truth, unfortunately.
No. I mean, it starts people's process off in a certain way. It's like Lisa Royal Priest. She had the encounter at the same place as mine, and then she's gone off and channeled. I mean, I love it all. I think it's very wise words. It makes sense in my head. It totally makes sense in my head, but it's not enough for me as well. And
I mean, look at someone like Darryl Anka and Bashar. He's made a very lucrative career out of his channeling, and that, to me, I struggle with it. I really do. It draws in a lot of crowds, and I think it draws in a lot of people because they want so badly to believe it's true. But as a researcher, you have to kind of stay more grounded, and so I really do keep it at arm's length.
It's like we're all kind of partitioned off, isn't it? Because you do, and I say this quite often, you have the channelers, you have the the experiencers, and then you have the militaries. We're all off in little sort of subsections, yet we equally trying to do the right thing.
That's it.
And we all think that we're doing it, but it's like the channeling world's massive. It's absolutely massive. I mean, some of the books that I've got are so old and so wise and so brilliant, but they're all saying the same thing, even to this very day, even back to like, 40, 50 years ago, that it's still exactly wise words. But, okay, right. So we are, for the next hearing you said is going to be when? May.
We haven't, not May. We've got meetings. We've got meetings happening behind the scenes at the start of May, and hopefully, you see, these people in Congress, they need to get the information. They need to know what questions to ask, who to subpoena to appear in front of these hearings, so that these are the kind of preparations that will be happening in the next couple of months. Then hopefully we'll see new hearings announced, hopefully for the summertime, as the way things have gone historically in the past few years. That's what's been happening, so fingers crossed it continues.
Who's sorry, because I don't know all of the big names. Who's the feisty lady, the brunette, that she asks all the questions at Congress?
Representative Nancy Mace.
She's fine. We need more of her.
Definitely. She's brilliant.
She is. And I suppose it must be a massive eye opener for her as well.
I mean, they have briefings leading up to these hearings as well. So, they've had time to sort of digest the information that has been presented to them. It's then a case of, looking into it or getting someone to sort of take it further. They have a great set of congressional staffers that work for them, who gather the intelligence and the data, and then they present it to the members of Congress. So they have a team who are also fully aware of this, who have the security clearances, who are able to speak to the whistleblowers or the military personnel with top secret SCI clearances and that. So the information is gathered, but then it's pulling it together and actioning on that data that's that's been a bit of a roadblock.
And it's a bit like solicitors. Everything takes its time, doesn't it? With
exactly.
paperwork.
That's a perfect way of putting it. It does. It just
it is. You just think, hang on a minute, come on, I want the evidence now. I want to hear this. No, I'm just waiting for the paper trail over there and everything, and that one's got to get back to me. But I know it's kind of, it is happening quick enough, because it really is. Vinnie, listen, in the last since 2000, since lockdown, we have really, all guns blazing. Lots of people have come forward, amazing footage, people are talking, but and I feel that it's sort of getting faster and faster this year already. Lots of things are happening. And since end of last year, I feel that the last 6 months, people are doing a lot of things behind the scenes that I know of as well. But you just think, England is so far behind, and it's so sad. You need to go to Parliament. You need to go to Parliament. You
Hanging down
do.
the door. Knock,
No,
knock.
well, no. Well, there's got to be a few of you. Come on, there's got so. Yeah, there has to be a few of you. Because where did we meet? Because go back to what we said. We were at the pub.
First time we met was when James Fox was visiting Sheffield.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
He was filming. It's obviously released now at the end of last year. The program, his latest documentary. He was filming in Sheffield for that with Dr. David Clark for the Calvine section, and then I met with James and gave him some information to work with as well to kind of get that segment into the film. So that was really good. Yeah.
Kelly, his sister. Adorable.
That's right. Yeah. Kelly, absolutely. And then there was the cameraman as well. I forget.
Oh, David West.
David,
what a sweetheart. Right, let's end on that note. He's a sweetheart. Right, listen, Vinnie, love to have you back. Going to have you
Anytime.
back after Congress. Right, okay. Sorry that I was a little bit not there thinking about everything. I think I was a little bit overwhelmed about all of the things I don't know within the military. It's a wrap, I've been told by Race. Thank you very much, Vinnie Jones. I have put the link to the Disclosure team for your YouTube channel. Everybody go to it. You've interviewed some amazing people, and I wish you every success and continue to do it and fight for England on ufology a little bit more over here, please.
Thank you, Bridget.
Right, take it easy. Take it easy, Vinnie. Bye. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.